Zack McCracken, Monkey Island 1 und 2, Maniac Mansion. Selten war ein Spieleentwickler so ein großer Einfluss auf ein ganzes Genre, wie es Ron Gilbert für das Adventure-Genre war. Nun ist Ron Gilbert zurück und hat natürlich ein neues Projekt mitgebracht. Wir hatten die Chance, hier in München mit ihm zu reden und haben mit ihm über Sachen gesprochen wie Kickstarter, die Tatsache, warum Deutschland das einzige Land ist, in dem noch Adventure-Games gespielt werden. Und natürlich haben wir mit ihm geredet über sein neues Projekt, The Cave. Das volle Interview mit Ron Gilbert gibt's jetzt nur hier auf Krautgaming. Viel Spaß! Ron, it's a pleasure to have you here. You're here with The Cave, your new game, and but you've came a long way from adventures in the 80s, and you defined some of the core adventure games. They exist in the gaming industry or gaming history. So how do you feel about that whole genre kind of, I wouldn't call it dying, but getting smaller?
Yeah, adventure games over the years, I don't think they really declined, but they just didn't grow at the same rate that a lot of other games were growing. So they kind of reduced in their importance or their significance, to gaming. So that was a little, disappointing because I like adventure games, I like designing adventure games, I like doing that stuff. So it is kind of neat to see this resurgence of adventure games, coming back in some way. So that's neat to see.
So you're actually helping adventure games coming back. You've had, with your friend Tim Schafer, a big thing running on Kickstarter. Can you tell us about that experience? What made you think that the players actually wanted to play adventure games?
Well, we've always known that people want to play adventure games. They just didn't know they wanted to play adventure games. So, Tim and I have always talked about, how you just really can't get a publisher to fund a classic point-and-click adventure game. And that's kind of where the idea of Kickstarter came up was, well, there's obviously these fans who want adventure games. I mean, I get hundreds of emails from people who want adventure games all the time. And so Kickstarter just became a way to go, all right, well, we're going to really reach out to those people and say, okay, well, here's your opportunity to kind of, put your money where your mouth is in a way and kind of help fund this classic point-and-click adventure game.
What do you think, where is the bigger pressure to deliver to some faceless publisher or to deliver to the horde of fans that are going to tear you apart if you don't deliver?
I think both of those things have their pluses and minuses, right? When you're doing a game with a publisher, you have to keep the publisher happy. You need to do things for them. If you're doing a game through Kickstarter, you have to keep the fans happy. You have to do things for them. So I think they're just both like two sides of the same coin in a way.
So Germany is obviously probably the only market where adventure games existed in the past few years. Why do you think that was happening?
I don't know. That's a really good question, and I wish I knew the answer to it. I don't know why adventure games are just so much more popular in Germany than anywhere else in the world, really. I don't know.
I was just talking to your colleagues, and there seems to be a saying around in your office that it's big in Germany. What's about that?
Well, we've always known that adventure games were just very, very, popular in Germany, and we really don't know why that is. I think if we knew why that was, maybe there's some magic formula we can replicate, in the other countries. But I don't know. It's a mystery.
So you're not here for a classic adventure game, but you're here for The Cave. That is a classic 2D side-scrolling jump and run adventure, I would call it. Isn't it a bold move to do such a simple game mechanic over again in this gaming market?
Well, I look at the cave really as a classic adventure game. It is an adventure game. There's all of that same puzzle solving that people liked in Maniac Mansion or in Monkey Island or any of those other King's Quest, any of those games. That puzzle solving is there in the cave. What I wanted to do with the cave was there were a couple of areas that I kind of didn't like with what was happening with adventure games. I thought inventory was getting a little too bloated. So with the cave, I wanted to get rid of inventory and actually have the characters just carry the thing around with them. I wanted to make traversal through the world a little more interesting. One of the things that always bugged me about, the old point-and-click games was just you would spend a lot of time just walking from one place to another, not even running. So Guybrush didn't know how to run. He just had to walk everywhere. And that just got a little boring after a while. And so with the cave, there's this very, very light platforming that goes on throughout it, just to keep the movement through the cave and through the world interesting. But the gameplay, I think, is very classic adventure game.
So the cave is featuring 7, probably 8 characters. Out of those characters, who is the main character?
I don't know that there is necessarily a main character. If I had to pick a main character, it would probably be the cave himself. He is the one constant, no matter who you choose. But each of the 7 characters, or 8 if you think of the twins as 2, I think of the twins as 1.
I was actually referring to the cave as the 8th character.
Okay, so there's actually 9 characters in the cave. But each of those characters, they have their own unique story. They have their own reason for going into the cave. There's entire areas of the cave that are really themed, for them. So there's very different stories being told. So yeah, maybe there isn't really a main character, so to speak.
So you're constantly playing with 3 freely selectable characters throughout the game, and the cave actually changes upon the choices you make in character selection. Is that right?
No, the cave doesn't change. The cave is completely consistent no matter who you choose. But because of the special skills that the characters have, there are areas of the cave that you may not have access to. So if you don't bring the hillbilly with you, he can hold his breath for a long time. So there's areas of the cave where you have to swim for a long ways. You just can't get to those areas of the cave if you don't have the hillbilly. So that's how we went about, making it different every time you play. But the cave itself doesn't actually change.
Is replay value something you had in mind while designing the game? I mean, a lot of players always complain about the low replay values of games these days. Do you have that in mind?
That was a big design consideration of the game, was that people could play the game with the first 3 characters they chose, and then when they choose another 3, or maybe they pick their favorite from the first playthrough and 2 new ones, that when they did play that they would get a game that was actually significantly different. It wasn't just 1 or 2 little puzzles that were different, but entire areas that they had never seen on that first playthrough. So that was a kind of a major piece of the design.
So you're featuring 7 very different characters that you can play in the game, or 8 if you consider the twins too. Have you something of yourself, of your own character in these playable characters?
I don't think in all of them that I do, but there's probably a little bit of me in at least one of those characters. There's a little bit of the dark place in my heart. It's kind of embedded in one of those characters, but I'm not going to tell you which one.
So while playing the cave, I had some little voice shouting Portal at me. I mean, the whole concept of the self-aware maze that is presenting puzzles to you, you have to solve to continue. was Portal some sort of inspiration?
When I was writing the cave and I was trying to figure out, what is the voice of the narrator, not the actor voice, but the written voice of this. I played a lot of different games. I watched a lot of movies. I looked at how narrators were used in movies and whether it was, like old film noir where it's actually a character in the movie narrating it, or whether it's just this disembodied narrator. And I did play a lot of Portal and see how they did it. And I played Bastion. And I looked at how that character was communicating and whether they reference the player or don't reference the player. And I wrote a whole lot of stuff. I wrote the cave one way, and then I wrote the cave a different way, and trying to figure out, what kind of made the most sense, and really kind of arrived at, what I did for the cave.
So the cave is actually a pretty hard, mind-boggling game. Isn't it a risky move to make the cave actually hard and not so accessible for players that just want entertainment?
Well, adventure games, if I look back on what I really enjoyed about adventure games, it was solving puzzles. It wasn't as quickly as I can running through the game, just kind of solving mindless puzzles. They were those moments when I had to sit and think for a while and really kind of puzzle over, okay, what is it I have? What locations are available to me? What kinds of things can I do to figure out those puzzles? To me, those were like the most enjoyable parts of adventure games. So I really wanted to bring a lot of that to the cave. I didn't want to build just this simple, watered-down adventure game that you kind of trip your way through, but be something that you did have to figure out. And we did a lot of playtesting with the cave. We brought in a lot of people. We watched them play the game. We watched hardcore adventure game players. We watched people who'd never played an adventure game before, and just kind of looked at where they were getting stuck and where they were hung up. And I think there's a really good balance. I think for people who've never played adventure games, sometimes something just clicks in their head about how this all works, and they just kind of start running through puzzles and have a lot of fun. So yeah, there's going to be a challenge, but I think that's a good thing.
So one last question about your experiences with democratizing the gaming industry with things like Kickstarter, where the gamer can actually say, all right, this is what I want and this is what I do not want, or Steam Greenlight, or all these projects like this. Doesn't have that a huge risk in itself about the first games not actually delivering what they promised?
Yeah, I think there's a little risk. I think there's always that kind of risk in anything that you're doing. If you're doing that with a publisher, there's still that risk. Games get canceled, games don't turn out right. A lot of that's hidden for most people. They don't see that struggle that goes on to make a game. And one thing that I think Kickstarter is really good at is it's kind of allowing people a glimpse into what it's really like. There's a lot of hard decisions. When you're making a game, not everybody's happy. Some people are unhappy with it. Some people are really happy with it. But that's just part of the creative process. And hopefully that'll just be interesting for people to really see and participate a little bit in what that creative process is actually like.
Have you backed some Kickstarter projects?
I back a lot of Kickstarter projects. I was backing Kickstarter projects long before we even did the Double Fine adventure. So, when I'm backing stuff, I kind of look for things that I think are really interesting. It's like, wow, that person's trying something really new, and they're not biting off more than they can chew. So I'll just kind of back it, I'll back it for $50 or $20 or whatever. So I love Kickstarter. I've always been backing stuff on Kickstarter.
All right. Thank you, Ron. That's it. Have a pleasant stay in Germany.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.